Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on evolving to a cloud-native SOC. My name is Chris, and I will be the moderator for today's presentation and discussion. I'm really excited for what we have prepared for you all today. I think we all know that cloud-based security controls are seeing a rapid adoption at the moment, especially because of an increased reliance on remote security operations and a remote workforce. So I think now is as good a time as any to discuss what it's like to build a cloud-based SOC, what are the key considerations, the benefits, and all of those great topics and content. Before we begin, I do want to let everyone know that this session is being recorded and what will be emailed out to you all later today upon the conclusion of this presentation. And furthermore, we do have time set aside at the end for a Q&A. So feel free to use the Q&A or chat button at the bottom of your Zoom control panel to ask those questions truly at any point in time. This really is meant to be more of a discussion, and we want you all to get as much out of this as possible. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it in the moment. We may be able to address it sooner during the discussion, but we'll definitely make sure we get to it at the end during the specific time allotted for a Q&A. So today's agenda, we will be doing introductions, then we'll sort of jump into sort of the current state of security operations, what are the current challenges that we're facing in the industry, which will then segue into our discussion on a cloud-based / virtual SOC, everything from people, process, technology. We do have some key takeaways for you all at the end, and then as mentioned, that Q&A. So it is my pleasure to introduce Jason McCall, who's the Global Cybersecurity Evangelist at Devo, and Arno Luce, our Technical Account Manager here at Simplify.
Thank you so much, Chris. Pleasure. Happy to be here today. I know as an account manager here, this is really a topic that's near and dear to my heart as I've assisted many of our customers in implementing Simplify. I've seen some of the challenges that they faced and the way a cloud-native approach can really lead to faster, more efficient results. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So as mentioned, sort of diving right into the security operations challenges that we're all facing today. First and foremost, pretty much the most common challenge out there, alert overload. We're constantly being overwhelmed in the SOC with a plethora of alerts. And honestly, a main reason for that is actually the next challenge, which is the disparate security tools. The average SOC is using at least 26 different security solutions that were certainly not designed to integrate with one another. And they're each generating separate alerts, which you're then having to spend time kind of correlating those alerts between threats. So, for a lot of SOCs at the moment, they have sort of an alert-centric view as opposed to a threat-centric view. And so it does take a lot of time for that alert enrichment, threat analysis, and a lot of those, investigations where you're spending copious amounts of time trying to find and validate that context. And again, because of those disparate security tools, it's also, you have really a lack of visibility into those threats. Again, it takes a lot of time for the triaging of events, that enrichment and analysis, using your threat intel solutions, et cetera, to really get a complete picture of the threat. And then furthermore, a lot of SOCs currently have manual and or inconsistent processes. Some SOCs don't even have any documented processes. And a lot of it, again, it just takes a lot of time, a lot of sort of mundane activities, a lack of automation and orchestration. So your security analysts are spending copious amounts of time, again, sort of investigating each individual alert when they really would benefit from a more of a threat-centric case management system. And then last but not least, I think we're all experiencing and have been for years a talent shortage. And it's not just a lack of talent, but it's also the retention of that talent because there's so many opportunities. A lot of analysts can switch very easily. And it's also, again, because of the talent shortage, there's also a lot of burnout in the SOC. So it's important not only to find that talent, but to keep them delighted, satisfied, and retain that talent. And I know, according to one of Devo's 2020 SOC performance reports, 78% of respondents actually said that working in the SOC is very painful. So definitely, I think, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, so I'll let Jason address this in a second, but I think to help address a lot of these challenges and to help make working in the SOC not as painful, I think there's a lot of advantages and opportunities that the cloud offers. So with that, I'll actually hand things over to Jason now to talk about the cloud native security operations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a situation that my experience with a lot of security operations centers are experiencing. The burnout, not only from the analyst fatigue of the lack of visibility, but the too many tools. I mean, there was a mention there around like 20 plus products. It's very difficult for analysts to be, master of all, jack of all trades, master of all of them. So the visibility factor is becoming quite a challenge. And these next gen cloud natives SIMs are truly trying to eliminate that barrier to their entry. So the nice thing about, the cloud native SOCs or SIM functionality is there's no restriction on what data that can be collected. A lot of the legacy technologies struggle with, the cloud sources that are being invoked by a lot of organizations. They can only do the on-premise type of data. So you're immediately introducing blind spots across the attack surface now. Or it could be coming into a situation where, we're global and we've got different cloud providers and different geolocations, and my traditional technology that I'm utilizing can't, go from one to another and cohesively bring that picture into one single pane of glass. That has always been a challenge with the legacy technologies, as well as, providing that the capability to not have to break the budget, right? And if I'm literally going to give my organization full visibility into the entire attack surface, a lot of other technologies are coming back with price tags and invoices that are significant, to where the operation teams have to unfortunately make decisions of, well, okay, what is it that we have to have versus we want to have? And then again, every time you're starting to eliminate the want to haves, your blind spots are increasing. When you're introducing those kinds of barriers into your environment, the real-time detection capabilities across the entire attack surface is increased exponentially. So, the next-gen operational platforms have to have real-time capabilities. Of course, we're always striving for that. But again, back to comparison and contrasting, a lot of those products that they're traditionally using are not giving true real-time. They have to do a lot of data transformation of the data that is being sent to it, such as indexing or such as parsing or whatever the requirements of the technologies are before it's usable. And that is not reliable anymore. We are up against these advanced persistent threats and this morphing code and the advanced adversaries. We have to have real-time visibility. We cannot wait for the products that we're utilizing to process the data before we can use it. So the nice thing again about this is, now that you're bringing and incorporating and eliminating these blind spots, why stop there in regards to just security, right? So if I'm introducing and giving access to my firewall, my proxy, whatever the technology stacks, my cloud services, why not integrate that entire ecosystem into one single cohesive view? If I need my IT operations to monitor the health and the status of my technology stack, and in real time notify me if I have, a perimeter defense engine that could be experiencing challenges or performance issues. I would want to know about that in real time. And I don't want to have to, go to access that data and try to use it in an investigation and it not being there. Now I'm having open tickets and figure out why. Eliminate all of these issues and being able to, orchestrate and automate my playbooks and my response capabilities without ever having to worry about, is the data there to support this?
I think that's a great point, Jason. I can't help but agree completely. I've thought for quite a while about the narrative regarding this cloud native approach. And I bring it back to my own experiences. Before my current role at Simplify, and for the majority of my career, I was that on-premise systems administrator, systems engineer that was architecting many of these solutions. And really, I bring it back to a shift in mindset, right? For the longest period of time doing my job, being that system admin, it was my job to go ahead and silo and protect all of my equipment to make sure that if something did occur, and I would expect that something could potentially occur, to limit the effects. And so I remember having conversations about only allowing IPsec connections to my critical database server. And we've got the perimeter firewall and the subnet firewall. Do I also need to enable the host firewall? And going to tech ed conferences from Microsoft where they announce the firewall is dead, the workstation is the new perimeter. And the mindset very much was to go ahead and segment and protect off your critical assets from your users, so on and so forth. And it really seems the mindset today has changed, that today the message itself is different. Today we want to democratize the data. We want to take down the silos, have everyone drinking from the data lake. We recognize that having timely access to all of the information across our organization leads to faster mean time to resolution and better decision making. And I think that's often what we're working towards here. And then that problem is faced by organizations, but then for MSSPs, the problem is essentially twofold. They have to face that for their own organization while also being that trusted advisor for their own clients and recommending solutions that will serve their clients well, not only today in terms of their interactions with the MSSPs and a cohesive workflow, but also into the future, to the challenges of tomorrow that we're not facing yet here today. And I think all of this comes back to having access to the data and to being able to interface with the products on the network. And obviously from a SOAR standpoint, it's about having the data, but then also being able to craft those use cases and those playbooks that allow us to go ahead and aggregate and accumulate all of the data that an analyst needs in order to make a decision or to make the best decision in a timely fashion. And I really think that's what we're discussing here. Is there are still all the business considerations. We still have to have policies and for things to be implemented correctly. But from the time that the business or the organization does choose to go one of these routes, then there is the engineering effort that is required to get the organization to where they want to be. And I think part of that is the infrastructure and the maintenance of the solutions, obviously, for which cloud native has many benefits. But then, as you said, from the SIM side, it all begins with the accrual or the accumulation of the data. And for many organizations, and specifically many SOCs that are looking at how to enhance their department, they also have the added worry of, well, I'm not the only department in my organization, right? There may be other other departments that are already taking advantage of some cloud technologies. They've already incorporated those, and now the SOC has to worry about blind spots potentially within their coverage. And I think bringing it back to Devo, this is an area where you're able to greatly assist.
Absolutely is. 100% agree. I mean, and again, being a practitioner in prior lives, I couldn't tell you how many times I was screaming at the top of my lungs because I didn't have the right data coming in, or the data was not there because the technology got overwhelmed. Whether it was just too much and overwhelming the system. There's the laundry list gets unfortunately long and broad. But you had a good point that I think is very important of, like you mentioned in your prior life, you were responsible for bringing these systems in, making sure they're up and up to date and things like that. that is a challenge that needs to be eliminated, right? We don't have to worry about anymore, managing parsers and managing, the indexers and managing all the operational functions to just give me visibility. I mean, we're in a generation now where the cloud providing services can immediately eliminate a lot of those situations. And now I can just be a consumer of the information that I depend upon. So, when you're enabling a cloud native platform such as Devo, and then you're attaching that to a orchestration engine such as Simplify, that MTTR, whether it's respond and or remediate, has exponentially been becoming more effective and efficient because I'm not having to worry about the management of it behind the scenes.
And this is exactly the process that that we go through with our clients during onboarding. We evaluate use cases in the building of playbooks to go ahead and introduce this automation. And depending on the infrastructure stack that we're working with, there could be additional complexities that come from that. It's not only a matter of understanding what resources and products you need to access in order to bring the data back in, but you also have to worry about, does that product provide that capability? Was it designed in such a way to facilitate this interaction? Because if I am able to pragmatically bring this data into Simplify, I can then go ahead and automate some of the decision-making processes around that because I have access to the information that I need in order to make those decisions. And indeed, we often start out with clients discovering that perhaps not all of the resources they wish to ingest from provide these capabilities. But I think that this is another advantage of the cloud native approach, is that applications which were designed in mind to be cloud native, these are design considerations that are tackled from the get-go, right? It is understood that this data will be shared and that there needs to be a means of dispersing this data. And so we often find when we're evaluating these use cases and looking to integrate with various products that the cloud native solutions not only provide a much easier way to go ahead and integrate and digest the data, but oftentimes a more complete solution, right? The API is more fully developed. Pretty much everything that you can do through the UI, you are able to then go ahead and reference pragmatically. And when discussing implementing automation, that's obviously something that's critical to the amount of time that it would take an engineering team to go ahead and deploy these solutions. And I think that's a big theme here as well, is just not only the initial deployment, but then obviously the maintenance that comes from after that, as well as taking advantage of new capabilities that are introduced in the platform. And with cloud native, oftentimes there's not a complicated upgrade process that needs to be gone through. These cloud solutions provide the latest, greatest, up-to-date capabilities natively to their clients without any additional engineering efforts on their end.
Absolutely. And I think one other big factor here with a lot of those scenarios you were just discussing is the scale and speed that cloud native security platforms can provide, because, Simplify is an amazing solution that can execute these playbooks to help automate those decision processes and remediation capabilities. But if you're not connected to a real-time system and a system that can provide queries or playbook executions of search in a real fast manner, then you're being restricted, right? You got these playbooks to say, I need to ask this question and this question and this question. And if it's having to go directly to the original technology stack to ask it, chances are very high that the playbook is sitting and waiting for the response or the answer of the question before it can start the next question of the journey. And that's one thing that's significant about the Devo Simplify package is Simplify needs to ask it, Devo answers it in seconds. There's no sitting around waiting for, is this statement yes or is it no before I can move on.
And in an ideal situation, you get an answer as simple as yes and no. There are some solutions that are unable to provide that concise answer, which still results in a flood of data being presented to the analyst. Even if 90% of the work has been done for them, it's not 100. And that ability to really drive down to that one concise answer, I think is critically important for the analyst, and the tools that they use should be able to provide them that. At the end of the day, those, I think, are the answers, and the ability to get those answers that provide that that organization with a more competitive advantage, right? It is not the crafting or how do we go through the complex process of ingesting all the data in a manner until it's usable. It's, we want the data to be usable. We wish to be able to ask it a very specific question and get back a direct answer that allows the analyst to continue on with their triage and make better informed decisions because they were able to very quickly get the answers that they needed.
Absolutely. And if you think about this from the other side of the fence, right, the adversarial side of the fence, they're empowering a lot of technologies and even machine learning capabilities on their attack scenarios. So they're certainly not waiting around for an answer of yes or no, or where do I go next? I mean, the stats are overwhelming when we look at, you know, how quickly and efficiently that adversaries can get lateral movement or escalation of privileges. It's not a fair fight unless you are truly operationalizing the team with at least the capability to ask the questions just as fast as the adversaries are. So, I mean, it's really becoming, it's an amazing space that we're starting to get into now with cloud native providing of, we can catch up, right? We can keep up with at least the challenges that we're up against. Well, that we're always going to be chasing, but at least now we're not as far behind the 8 ball as we were in prior technologies.
And I think that's an important distinction as well, is that we are able, the cloud native technologies can also be stood up in parallel to the on-premise technology, right? When we discuss cloud native, it's not a binary state. It's not a yes or no situation. It can be an ideology that is strived towards that openness that is allowed and that is facilitated by the usage of these cloud native technologies. And I like to equate it back to, you know, if we look at this at a somewhat smaller scale, and really if you look at whether you're going through different product evaluations or POCs, that's a little mini ecosystem that encompasses a lot of what's required in order to turn up and actually get to a point where you can use a new product, right? And the last thing you want as you're going through a POC is all of the weeks of stand-up work for the infrastructure and everything that gets you to a point to understand and evaluate to understand if it's a solution for you. And when we look at the ease in which we can do so with cloud native solutions and cloud native technologies, I think that's really very representative of what the overall implementation and usage experience looks like. With cloud native technologies, if you wish to evaluate, it's often a pay-as-you-go subscription. You can only pay for what you use, and it does give you the ability to quickly iterate to see how your technology stack and the products you're using, if I chose product X, Y, or Z in order to go ahead and complement my stack, what would that look like? This really gives you, cloud native technologies gets you to those decisions in a much more rapid fashion than you would have through on-prem technologies.
Absolutely right. And I mean, one other thing to expand upon that is, you know, in those legacy tools, you know, you might have this license that's invoked that says, you know, here's how much data I'm going to throw at the technology, the provided, whether it's the data lake or it's the SIM, whatever it might be. But let's say, and we, you know, denial of service happens, or a significant spike in data starts being thrown at this the platforms. Now they're being overwhelmed technically, where they can't keep up and things start, you know, dropping, as well as all of a sudden, you know, you might get restricted and your pipe might get throttled because you're exceeding your license. And, you know, it's a snowball effect of how things just go bad and worse and horrific as those data volumes increase. And when you're looking at a cloud native security operation platform, such as a Devo, you know, those are eliminated immediately from the equation, where you're never having to worry if something spikes or something changes, am I not going to be able to use this tool? Is it not going to be there for me when I need it?
And oftentimes that's not even under your control, right? I've
Right.
seen MSSP scenarios where, for instance, the automation would be under the control of the MSSP, but the SIM would be under the control of the client. And even though there's coordination that takes place between getting the two to interoperate, it is possible that the client can make a SIM change that has repercussions down the line later on, and the MSSP has no ability to prevent that, but they have to be able to deal with it if that's what they see. And that's indeed where the flexibility and the scaling or the scalability of these cloud native solutions does in fact give them the ability to adopt to those workloads. And as
Absolutely. And think about
we
that from an MSSP. You made a great point. Think about that as I have this SLA in place around, what is my mean time to respond, or, whatever the contract I have in place with my customer. And if I'm being, restricted by these technologies that is, not allowing me to meet or exceed those SLAs, that is a big challenge for those providers. They need to not have to worry about any of those variables and just provide the services that they're contracted to do. So that is something significant when you're talking about cloud native security platforms. That's truly allowing MSSPs or MSPs or MDR organizations to really protect their customers.
and not only protect them today, but future-proof them as well.
Exactly.
I think it's
Exactly.
as if we've seen one thing, it's that criminals and cyber criminals are at the forefront of technology. They're willing to use any and all means at their disposal. They get very creative. And us on the defensive side have to be creative and have to have the flexibility to respond. And I think that really is one of the biggest advantages that these cloud native solutions provide. I also, because it's been something that I've encountered assisting customers, I don't want to downplay the interoperability side, especially from Simplify's standpoint, that it is our ability to integrate with such a wide variety of products that would comprise an MSSP or a SOC's technology stack. That is part of our competitive advantage, but it really does require us to be able to speak with those solutions. And I've noticed this with onboarding new clients as you begin discussing what is the information required within each use case for analysts to make better decisions. Organizations start understanding that perhaps not all of their internal data is quite as accessible, right? There's always some information that's in the lead engineer's head. But this is a way when we go to integrate with these systems, when we want to pull in all that contextual knowledge from perhaps a variety of different systems, there is a big difference in the ability to do so when looking to incorporate an on-premise technology versus a cloud technology. The cloud technologies were designed with this interoperability in mind. They definitely aid to facilitate it. And that comes back, right, when you're actually implementing with an engineering team, that just comes back to tremendous cost savings in the engineering team not having to tackle these problems that have essentially already been solved for them by these cloud native solutions.
No, I agree. And one last piece on that you just touched base on is, when you can join wagons like Devo and Simplify, when you just mentioned about, interoperating with those on-prem devices and then, hoping that they have ability for you to interact with them. One thing that's significant that I've seen in our customers is that speed and scale factor that I just talked about before. Is a majority of those questions that Simplify may have to ask of the data, they don't have to go directly to the technology. They can go right to Devo to ask it, because Devo is collecting and storing that all centrally. So my pipe of question and answer went from the 20 plus products to 1-to-1. And now I only have to really make sure if I need to invoke the remediation step where I need to talk to that technology, that is reducing significantly my MTTR, because I'm gathering all the data directly from Simplify and Devo. I can gather the context I need in so much faster time. So now I'm only having to worry about, can that action that Simplifies asking the endpoint, the firewall, whatever it is, to whether it's isolate or stop or kill or whatever it may be, those barriers have immediately been reduced. So again, from an MSSP or from even an internal SOC, those are the environments they want to live in, not having to worry and constantly chase.
Query one data source, get responses back from your security products, your infrastructure products, and your application monitoring. Absolutely agreed. It only helps to give a more cohesive, full answer to the analyst that's assisting with the triage.
If you guys don't mind, I would love to chime in real quick. I think we've been talking a lot about the benefits, right, of moving to the cloud, how it addresses a lot of the current challenges that everyone's facing today, including data visibility, et cetera. I think a lot of that is all sort of the why should you move to the cloud, right? But I'm also curious from both of your perspectives, the how. So from your point of view, what are some of the key considerations and best practices that you guys both have when it comes to building that cloud-based SOC?
Well, from our side, if we're usually the first integration is to the SIM. And so right off the bat, if it's a cloud native SIM, that very first connection from within Simplify is often facilitated and gets data into the platform much faster than other solutions.
Absolutely. And, from the onboarding process, again, the nice thing about our platform is we can take any data, whether structured or unstructured, whether it's on-prem, it's in the cloud, no matter where it is, right? So the SOC journey, especially now when we're looking at the virtual or remote workforces, we have our SOC analysts that are sitting at home like we all are right now, right? So the first step of that journey is always eliminating the visibility factor. Let's get all the data into the centralized platform, invoke the plumbing between Devo and Simplify, as obviously we're talking about these two technologies today. So basically, immediately, you're not having to spend a lot of administrative time trying to figure out, what do I need here? What do I need there? Is this giving me the right data? Bottom line is, whatever attack surface you got, whatever data source that you feel is necessary to protect, pump it into the cloud SIM. Once it's there, now you can efficiently and effectively operationalize your playbook executions to give you what you need for that, effective security operations center.
And I really think that is the key point, is that visibility, right? When we're now working, even if for right now the stack that we're discussing is our two products, by being cloud native solutions, right? As you're onboarding these products, the majority of the conversation is not about the technical nuance of going ahead and getting them working. You can, in a very short period of time, have a lot of data, a lot of visibility, and connect that data source, that SIM, to Simplify. And now, essentially from day one, the conversation is more centered around, okay, this is the data we have. How can we more intelligently use it? What workflows can we build off of it? As opposed to spending that beginning time, right? Those first impressions which are made, discussing, well, how do we even get the data until we can start actually using it in a format that benefits our analysts? And at the end, a lot of this is done really for the analyst benefit in order for them to be able to better do their job, for them not to suffer from that alert fatigue and the frustrations of needing to go and discover this data in all the different silos in which it resides. And so by virtue of not having to really have that discussion around initially bringing the data in and making the assumption that it is now available, you have higher level conversations that I think really bring workflow improvements and competitive advantages to the organizations versus some of the more engineering focused tasks, which really do not provide that competitive advantage.
So why do you guys think some of the reasons are that some organizations hesitate to move to the cloud, and how would you address some of those concerns?
From my perspective, in my interaction with organizations, we grew up, a lot of us, with this physical data center, these physical data points on-prem, right? I mean, as an administrator or even a incident responder, we're always used to hey, I can go and touch the appliance, or I can go and, physically get access to a device if I need it, right? And then there's when, you know, when organizations are like, oh, okay, now everything's in the cloud, I don't have that anymore, right? So now I am entrusting other organizations to be that management operation, which organizations are reluctant to do, right? Even though there's proof that the cloud providers are the next gen and streamlining it and making things much more effective and efficient. There's still that reluctancy because it's like, okay, I've got maybe this specific data and I don't want it leaving my protected border, or you know, I'm very reluctant to have any of this data in the cloud because I can't physically control it. So there's a lot of variables there, but the proof is in the pudding when you talk about these cloud providing technologies and how successful we've been in organizations, whether it's more from an efficient manner or it's more from a productive manner. You know, times are changing and people are finally starting to adapt and adopt to that cloud providing services.
And I also think some of the hesitancy comes also from the business processes leading up to that adoption of cloud technologies, that it moving to the cloud does not mean, right, that you purchase a service one day without any forethought whatsoever, and now you dump all of your data in it. There are still some activities. You still need policies in place that govern that data usage, who has access to it, things of that nature. And this is rightfully so. At no point do you just want to be dumping data in random places as an organization without a policy around how you're going to treat and maintain that data. So I think that this is a lot of it. It's not that there's engineering challenges. There is a lot of it which is different, as Jason highlighted. But it also, moving to the cloud does not negate the need for sound business practices and policies that govern what will happen with that data once it is in the cloud. And I can say, speaking as I said previously, a systems engineer and infrastructure engineer for a large part of my life, I suffer from that hesitancy that Jason mentioned. Even though I did not enjoy taking backups of servers and performing routine maintenance tasks, those were some of the activities that gave me confidence in my infrastructure. And I think the understanding needs to be there in the cloud that it is the cloud operators that are implementing the best practices, that are implementing the consistent, reliable infrastructure. And while the policies that govern that need to be understood, it is no longer the responsibility of the organization to go ahead and implement those. But a lot of times it's the policies surrounding moving that data to the cloud that seem to be a barrier to entry.
And I'm actually glad, Jason, that you said the proof is in the pudding, because we actually had someone ask a question just now. They would like to know, what measurements or KPIs have you seen that help validate the effectiveness of the cloud-based technologies?
That's a great point. And actually, it's something that we are very proud about within our platform is not only do we have that real-time access to the data and much more efficient response times when asking questions of that data, but we have actual built applications that are KPI focused. Now, these KPIs could be in a multiple pronged approach when it's talking about Security Operations Center. As I mentioned a little bit ago, I want KPIs that monitor the disk, the CPU, the network interfaces, the bandwidth, all of those things to ensure I constantly have the visibility and give me that real-time visibility if they are degrading. But also on the flip side, you know, the efficiency and effectively of the SOC teams, you know, what is their average time to respond? What is, you know, how quickly and efficiently are we, you know, getting through these alerts that come in? And if we're getting these alerts on, you know, let's have the reporting on a real-time basis. How many alerts come in per day? How many of them are worked? How many of them actually equated into an actual incident? And how long did it take my team to respond to that incident and remediate it? And then, you know, that journey could continue. But the nice thing when you're talking about when you're bringing in a Simplify and like a Devo, just obviously using ours as examples, when you're bringing them in and you can automate and have visibility into the effectiveness of that, your KPIs are right there in your face, and you can adapt and model them if you need to on the fly.
Agreed. And I would say also from the Simplify side, a couple of key metrics would be the false positive closure rate, right? How many, the reason an alert exists within Simplify is it has been identified as something that needs to be investigated a little bit further. If we have automated playbooks that are able to go ahead and close out certain alerts as known false positives, that only further reduces the workload on the analyst. And really, I'd have to say that the biggest gains and the biggest efficiencies would be that mean time to response, right? That in a more traditional sense, an alert comes in and there is a period of time during which we are in an enrichment phase, an information gathering phase. And then it's not until that information is gathered and understood and evaluated that decisions are able to be made on it. And sometimes this can take 30, 40 plus minutes in order to go ahead and complete that enrichment stage, versus when you go ahead and automate it within Simplify, you can have in under 5 minutes from the time that the alert was ingested, have that enriched case and enriched alert available for the analyst to go ahead and make their decisions and conduct their investigation. So I would say mean time to response, and then that translates to mean time to resolution, are both metrics that I've seen drop exponentially by going this route.
Awesome. I do want to quickly just remind everyone, feel free to use the control panel, ask those questions at any time. But to address another question that came through, Arno, you alluded earlier to sort of SOAR or just cloud native technologies, sort of doing a better job spurring collaboration between service providers and their customers. Could you please elaborate on that? And Jason, feel free to chime in as well.
Indeed. So MSSPs kind of face this problem twofold, right? They have internal stacks that they are required to maintain, as well as interacting with customers and the stacks that the customers are bringing to the table. And the ability to go ahead and integrate those systems, again, is of paramount importance, because as we know, discussing with analysts, collaboration and communication are two key factors resulting in not only more timely alert resolution, but also more thorough alert resolution. So now within Simplify, we have some workflows that we enable that really allow that closer collaboration and communication. And not only that, but, and I think perhaps another topic that we glossed over a little bit really is the change in the landscape with regards to the remote workforce in this COVID time. And the fact that these people that need to collaborate are sometimes in the same organization, but not geographically sitting in the same place. Or if it's the collaboration between an MSSP and a client, that's also the case. And that these technologies really do not add additional barriers to allowing that communication and collaboration. That within Simplify, we are able to go ahead and allow collaborators to participate inside the platform, and really to go ahead and communicate with the analysts that are working cases in a scenario where the analyst is on the MSSP side. And not having the additional barriers, not having the on-premise equipment requiring VPN or multiple layers of access, really does go ahead and foster that collaboration needed to improve, yet again, the metrics that we were discussing before.
Yeah, and I agree too. And that's another thing from a Devo perspective that we are, a lot of our partners, MSSP partners and MDR partners, really like about our real-time access and real-time visibility is, you know, traditionally via the contracts, maybe an MSSP might invoke, you know, they put in place like, well, we can on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, whatever it may be, we'll run reports to give you visibility into the effectiveness of our service that we're offering. For when MSSPs use for that, they actually don't have to depend or require a scheduled report or an analyst to run the report and email it to their customers. The customers actually have live access with restricted dashboards to where they can log in to a console with just access to their reports and have real-time visibility, whether it's how many alerts are coming in, what's the status of the investigation being worked. It's what we call them actual active boards. They're not dashboards. These are active boards where either the customer or the operator can interact with it and pivot on whatever things are important to them at the time they need it. So they're not having to wait for, hey, what's the status of this? Or where are we at with that? Devo gives the real-time visibility into it anytime they need it.
And also keeping in mind that oftentimes this collaboration is not just between engineers or analysts, right? Depending on the investigation, this may require legal counsel, HR, people for whom, right, they don't have the VPN installed beforehand. It was not anticipated that they would need to collaborate, but now, today, they do. And all these solutions enable that easy onboarding and removing the barriers to involving those people so they can provide the value that's needed for the investigation.
Absolutely.
We've had, it looks like one more question come through so far. And I think since the remote workforce and everyone working from home has been a key driver in the adoption of cloud technology, someone would like to know, as teams start to head back to physical workspaces, especially in the second half of this year, do you think that adoption will slow down or will it continue to accelerate as it has been?
I don't think the remote workforce is something that's going to be behind us anytime soon. I know through reading and through discussions that I've had that even for organizations that are planning to mostly return back, I don't believe a remote workforce is something that we can escape anymore. And it's often been said that to enable a remote workforce, you have to focus on the remote workforce. And the last thing that you would want would be a scenario where the majority of the analyst or the workforce is back in the office, but not 100%. And we can't, right? You need a cohesive view. You need an experience that is the same for an analyst, regardless of where they're working from. And so I don't think remote is going away anytime soon. And I think all future technologies will have a greater emphasis on enabling these remote workforces to either work together purely remotely or in a hybrid model where even a majority of the workforce can be in an office.
Totally agree. I mean, if you think about it, we were forced to adopt and adapt because of the pandemic, right? But think of, if you look at the big global picture of this whole scenario, everybody in the world, every organization had to shift their defense posture, their process, their incident handling processes and procedures, their technologies that they've empowered. So, I mean, it's never going to happen that where, okay, the pandemic's over, everyone's allowed to go back to work, and then all these organizations are going to go back to their old practices and go back to their own technologies. We've shifted, right? And we're here to stay. Whether it is people come back to the brick and mortar, and some do, some don't. At the end of the day, from a cyber perspective, I mean, there's no way ever to successfully go back. It's always move forward, always adapt, and continue to grow. So this is here to stay, and it's only going to get bigger and better.
And this is just the most recent challenge which has been faced. And I think it's a good example of the unpredictability of the future, right? Organizations which had a more traditional infrastructure going into COVID, I believe, had a harder time adapting and enabling their workforce versus those who had started out or adopted a cloud native or at least a hybrid approach before COVID struck. When we discuss the cloud native approach and the flexibility that it brings, I like to use COVID as an example of that. Hopefully we don't suffer anything quite as devastating or unpredictable anytime in the near future, but it is just one example of a situation for which cloud native solutions were more easily able to adapt.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. I think those are all the questions that have come through so far. I think we can move from sort of the discussion into sort of wrapping things up. So I'll start by letting Jason just review Devo. real quick.
Thank you very much. And just to summarize, because we've been talking a lot about what Devo does, what Simplify does, the power of the two together. But some of you might be asking, okay, what really is Devo, and what does it do, or what or vice versa, what does Simplify do? And at the end of the day, Devo is the first cloud native next gen security analytics platform that really combines the context, intelligent context, right? So there was a statement made before about taking 5-10 minutes to gather additional context around an alert. Devo's doing that automatically. So when you're generating an alert, you're getting the intelligent context with the alert. It's not having to wait for it. So we provide analyst-focused workflows, seamless integrations with technologies like Simplify to truly streamline and transform the SOC by focusing on what matters the most in the most efficient manner possible.
Awesome. And then quickly, Arno, if you want to just cover Simplify.
Sure. So I think I'd piggyback on many of the same advantages. Clearly, there are benefits when Simplify is dependent upon the products and technologies that we integrate with to provide the workflows that we are able to provide. While it is ideal when connecting to a SIM like Devo that does collect and contain most of the information that would be required for an analyst to do their job, it is not every organization that is as centralized with their data storage and their event storage. And one of Simplify's premises is that we do work, we are the #1 independent SOAR provider. We work with a multitude of technologies, over 200 integrations in our marketplace at this point, and really we strive to be that single pane of glass for the SOC to really make it easier for the analyst to have more contextual, relevant information presented to them so that they're able to apply their human intelligence and decision making to affect the best outcome for their investigations, for their organization. And so I would say our strengths lie where, as with many, we're better together, and we're definitely dependent on the quality of the sources of information that we're able to query and pull from. And so I just say the higher the sources that we're able to ingest from by full-featured SIMs like Devo, the easier the job it is to craft solutions within Simplify in order to go ahead and automate those SOC processes.
Awesome. So I think just to sort of summarize everything that we've talked about today and some of the key takeaways when it comes to a virtual SOC or a cloud-based SOC, the cloud-first advantage obviously has a ton of benefits, including scale, speed, visibility, availability, adaptability, multi-tenancy, you name it. There's a lot more flexibility with that sort of cloud-first approach. And I think it offers organizations a lot of opportunities, especially when it comes to managing those security operations across people, process, and technology, which you can then do obviously from anywhere. As mentioned, the remote workforce isn't going anywhere. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Furthermore, when it comes to MSSP specifically, that sort of cloud-first technology really does enable you to modernize your portfolio when it comes to the services that you offer. So it does help enable, going just from sort of monitoring and detecting as sort of your key services to really that managed threat hunting, for example, some of those key differentiated services that your organization can then start to offer. And again, the cloud technology helps close that gap between detection and response across those complex environments, especially with the additional visibility and data management that these solutions offer. And lastly, as Arno and Jason both mentioned, it really does enable a more collaborative partnership between service providers and end users. I don't know if Jason or Arno, if you have any parting thoughts before we close out.
No, I think that covers it well. I think this is a full-featured, flexible combination that allows MSSPs to differentiate their service offering from some of those competitors, and those that can come through as the service offerings themselves, the aggressiveness of the SLAs that are adhered to, and not to mention just first impressions with those new clients in terms of ease of onboarding and setting that as the stage for future interactions. I think those are the main highlights.
Couldn't agree more. And again, just want to thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you guys seen some value in the conversations that we were having. And if you're interested in know more, please don't hesitate to reach out to both of us. We'd love to have further conversations with you about it.
100%. And with that, I did want to just add, there's some other resources, obviously, when it comes to the virtual SOC or the state of remote security operations, for example. I know Devo has a fantastic report on SOC performance, as well as our survey report on the state of remote security operations at Simplify. I'll likely be including both of these resources and more in the follow-up email that will also have the recording of this session as well. So with that, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for asking those questions, being part of the discussion. We hope you gained something from this conversation, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.